The Steyr M9 is probably one of my favorite striker-fired pistols, and I really wasn't expecting it to. I got an opportunity at a local gun shop to test fire a C9, which is basically a compact barrel. It's just a little bit under 4 inches, about 3.5 or 3.6, I believe, is the measurement, basically to about here. This little cutout right here, this little marker, and it's about that size in the barrel, but it maintains a full-length grip, which is kind of peculiar. It seemed to be a popular thing with things like XDs or what have you, but I'm not quite sure what the popularity is in that. I would say that there's a lot about this pistol that give it a unique but very appealing appearance and function. So let's go over a little bit about the design in general and specifically aesthetics and the grip and ergos. So we'll combine it all into one. As you can see, the top is very thick. It almost looks like a taser. It has a very similar profile to tasers that law enforcement use, how it's very thick here, and they tout that it has a low bore axis, but I do not notice that helps very much. It's very dependent on another system that we'll talk about later to reduce recoil, but here you do get a very high grip on the pistol. It is very easy to do so, but at the same time, as you can see, my finger has to angle downwards. It's not very straight across like it would be here, which would probably be more ergonomically appealing. Now, this is the latest generation, where notably by this pin, as you guys have probably seen from other videos on the Steyr pistols, but you have a 111 degree grip, I guess, and this thing is very extreme. Like, let me just demonstrate what it's going to be like if you shoot anything like a 1911 or so. It's going to be about here. As far as the grip on this, it is very, it feels very slim, but here's the thing, there's something about the polymer texture and the way that the texturing is on the grip. It kind of has this, not necessarily sandpapery grip, but it's not very smooth as you would think, and you can probably see a little bit of that slightly, off smooth texturing that it has just naturally. And of course you have horizontal serrations here to keep it from slipping down, and also this one finger groove, which is a very small sacrifice to make, and this very low profile finger groove, you can see it barely goes out a little bit. And then on the back, you have a little bit of an interesting correction here as far as these little points right here, where basically the extra skin is going to fall into these points and give you a more secure grip. So you also have horizontal texturing that sticks out just a tad here. It works out very well. When I grab this pistol, I actually end up touching right here, but it seems like a very good one-size-fits-all. But one thing I would like to see with this is it not to be, number one, serialized, and to actually be able to get different frames for this. I think it would be very easy for Steyr to do, but unfortunately it's not on Steyr arms in the US, I don't think, to actually innovate and create different things. They do import these, and they get threaded barrels and other such framed pistols, like the green one that I saw at SHOT Show, and I think I saw a flat dark earth one as well. But anyways, so I find that the grip and the general characteristics of this pistol are very appealing if you can correct yourself to them. The one thing that I find interesting is there's a lot of people that love this pistol. It does have quite a cult following, but they never mention how short the slide is. It's kind of like the P07, how there's very little texturing here, but this is very, very aggressive, kind of like the P07. These serrations are at a right angle. They did not chamfer this very much, if any. So it is very aggressive texturing, but it's not going to like rip up a glove or anything. It's not ridiculous, kind of like a F&S, how it's very sharp. So in general, I really like this pistol, the looks and the feel of it. It just feels like a very good quality polymer pistol, one of the few. So let's go ahead and move on to the takedown and the general operation of this pistol. So this pistol operates off of a chassis system, but it's very interesting how they kept this safety system. They wanted to integrate safeties into this pistol, and what they had was a cross safety in the earlier generations, which you can kind of see they kept the mold, but they did not, you know, machine it out. You can see sort of what's left here on both sides, where they were, you know, drilling these out and putting a cross safety here, where basically you would push off this safety, kind of like the AUG. And I'm guessing the ergonomics were supposed to be very similar to the AUG, where you use the intuitive push and then you went right to the trigger, as I've discussed with the safety technique. But then you have this safety right here where you can actually push in a pin. You get two of these. You can stick this pin in and turn this counterclockwise and then lock up the system. I believe it shoots out. Not much, but it locks up the system to where you cannot rack, well, you can rack the slide, but it disengages the trigger. So yeah, you can rack the slide, get everything out of there if you wish, and that's pretty much it. And then put it back on fire, and there you go. So it does lock up. I wouldn't really trust it too much. I don't think it's really that great of a feature, especially for a home defense gun. Even if you have kids, just conceal it or put it in a lockbox that is biometrically activated. I concern myself with this safety right here. It's not really that big of a deal. It's not going to actuate itself. Not really a big concern to me. But as far as disassembly, you just push down on this button right here, and it is definitely not a one-handed disassembly. And as long as it's striked out, you know, you can disassemble this, and even with the magazine inserted, which is kind of an interesting feature. But as you can see, the insides, it's very beautiful, very well machined, no machining marks, and it's very open. And also, I've discussed in a separate video the firing pin safety and how the striker is. It's angled, and that I think that plays more into the firing pin safety than the actual characteristics of the trigger, because the trigger is not exactly a good selling point as much as people would like to give it. It's basically like a mushy PPQ trigger with a little bit more travel, but I'll talk about that in a second. So you have a flat wire spring with a nice thick base, and then you have the barrel. It has standard rifling. It is very beautiful. The feed ramp is polished. It is very nice. The finish on this, as you can see, it doesn't really hold up too well, but it is kind of isolated in where it wears. So not really that much lubrication is required. You can see not much wear. It's very smooth. The fitting is not very tight, but it's tight enough to where it feels like it's always lubricated, but I still do lubricate mine. And as you can see here, you have some slight wear points on these rails, but all in all, the little camming surface doesn't really wear that much. So let's go ahead and talk about the chassis. The chassis is what I would actually credit with the lowering of the recoil. And also, I would credit the fact that this thing does not, the spring does not compress all the way, and you can see how far forward the slide actually hits the frame. And you can see that there's cutouts here, and I believe this is an area this is a crush area, a sacrificial crush area, so the polymer can kind of flex backwards. And the longer it has to travel into the hand, I believe, is probably best because it allows it to absorb the shock. And this area right here is the chassis system. It's all one piece, and basically you have a very empty grip after that. And basically your frame is empty. But this is very strong. It's one piece. It is machined out. It's very beautiful inside there, and I'll do a separate video about that. But overall, I think you can see why this pistol might have very low recoil. Not only that, but also the grip angle. So it's one of the lowest recoiling polymer pistols on the market, especially for its size and the other characteristics it has. But it's very simple, very easy to understand. So last thing I want to talk about is the trigger. The trigger is a source of praise for a lot of people, but the only place that I would praise it is in its length of pull. It actually, the safety here actually forces you to do some take-up right here. When you're shooting fast, that actually can be very valuable for you to not set the round off too quickly from the draw. And I find that to be a very valuable thing. But if you're slow firing, this trigger is not exactly the nicest for you until you get used to the recoil and you don't anticipate that. So really, I don't hold this trigger in too high esteem, but let's go ahead and talk about why. You can see here, take up, and then there's mush, mush, mush. And then of course you have your reset, which is fairly short, and even after the reset you have mush, 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 and then it goes. It's not really that bad, but when you're shooting fast you don't really notice it, and once you're used to it, it's not really that big of a deal, and it probably will feel a lot nicer if you do not lubricate the sear and the striker. One thing of note is that this is a 17 round magazine, but it only has a marker for 15. So what you're seeing is a +2 base plate, and if it weren't for this, it would actually fall under. It would actually fall under the 5.5 inch height, which it would probably fall at about 5.3 or so inches tall. It's not really that big, but you know, it's matching the size of 17 round magazines, and I think Steyr was smart enough to know that the American market is very unaccepting of anything that is roughly 5.5 inches tall that only have 15 rounds. So it was kind of nice that they put a +2 base plate on here for it, but really I don't see the need for it. But it does kind of give you a little bit more grip for those who have more of a Hulk hand. Last thing I want to talk about is this magazine release. It's very thin, it's very easy to actuate, believe it or not, but I would say that it's not really anything special. But, you know, in general, it's very functional. I didn't really notice it as anything of an issue or a benefit. Alright, I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop it down in the comments below. And thanks a lot for watching. And again, if you have any requests, go ahead and go on my Facebook and enter them there. Thanks a lot.